Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm International Partnerships Manager for Factory International. We do many things, including running the building that Tom was at last week. But in this context, I'm here because we also produce Manchester International Festival, which is an 18-day biennial festival of new commissions. The festival has been running since 2007. And what I'm talking about today is some of our work around disabled access. Yeah. Thanks. That is a picture from MIF 23 down on Festival Square. So MIF, like many of you, is funded through a mix of public subsidy, fundraising, and earned income. And because we're partially public funded, we consider it our responsibility to be representative of the city in which we operate, Manchester. And that means in terms of the artists we program and platform, the team we work with, and the audience for our work. And as a way of ensuring that we do this, we have targets around all of this that match the demographics of the city of Manchester. So based on the most recent census, if we can go to the next slide, 24% of people in Manchester have a disability. So that's not a small amount, that's almost a quarter of the population. So what we're aiming for is for people with a disability to make up 24% of the artists we program, 24% of our staff, and 24% of our audience. Now, I know people can get wary with these kind of numbers. These aren't quotas, so 24% is a target. And from the perspective of artistic programming, it gives us another lens through which we can interrogate our programming. It's a way of prompting us to search out disabled artists and broaden our network, and to consider who don't we know and why don't we know them and why aren't we looking. So this is something we've been doing for a few years. And one of the things that has become very clear is that aside from the fact that the disabled artists we've worked with make great work that should be seen, it's on a level with everything else, working with them is one of the best ways of pushing forward our own access work because it challenges us. And as an example of that, in 2023, we worked for MIF 23, we worked with an artist called The Vacuum Cleaner. His name's actually James, but he goes by The Vacuum Cleaner. He's a UK-based artist and activist who he makes work that's about mad pride and disability justice that draws on his own experiences. And so he spent a year working with 40 young people in Manchester with experience of mental health problems to create Barmy Army, which is the image you can see here. It was an exhibition, totally took over the exhibition space at one of the local venues. It was a social media takeover. They ran public-facing workshops, and it was also a protest about mental health provision in the UK because the services, especially for young people, are not good enough. So we closed the streets of central Manchester and had them marching through down to Aviva Studios, our own building. Every single part of this process, as well as all of the public-facing events, had to be accessible to this group of young people who had really wide-ranging mental health issues. And so our way of dealing with this was what we call access riders. It's something we'd used before. Go back a slide, it's not that, that we really had to improve for this project. So an access rider is like a tech rider in that it's a list of requirements. And for an access rider, that might be physical. So I think if people might have more experience if you've got an artist coming in and they say they're in a wheelchair, they need a shower in their hotel room that they can actually use. But in this instance, it was more around working methods and the working environment. So someone who struggles with concentration over long periods of time might ask for shorter working sessions. Someone who's dyslexic might say that they prefer to receive information verbally rather than just have long emails sent to them detailing everything they need to know. It's a way of gathering information. And what we found is that just asking people what they need helps them think that through and work it out for themselves. And it helps people advocate for themselves. So having had to use them extensively on this project, it's now something we're making routine, not just on work where we know a lot of the participants and the artists will have access needs because they have stated up front that they're disabled, but with everybody. Because essentially what we're saying to people is, what do you need in order to do your best work? And that's information we want from everybody. Good access, provision, and practice benefits everyone, not just people with a stated disability. So the access riders, they're all about conversation and communication. And we've also found that communication is the key thing with disabled audience members. So our program, which some of you might be familiar with, is eclectic and interdisciplinary. It takes place in all kinds of venues, including found spaces, public spaces. So beyond the very basics, which for us include that we don't do events in venues that aren't wheelchair accessible. If you can't get a wheelchair in for the audience, then that's not happening. But beyond that, we can't provide identical access provision across all events. They're too different. And that's probably the case for a lot of people here. So what we focus on instead is making our work as accessible as possible, but then providing as much information as we can for people so that they can make their own decisions. And the methodology we use for this is access audits. So if you go on to the next slide, this is an example of the access information we put on our website for one of our shows. And we do this for all of them. This comes from Rose, which was a contemporary dance club night crossover that we did in MIF 23. So if you go to the next slide, that gives you a sense of what it was like. But the key thing about our access information is that we don't just say what we're providing, we specifically say what we can't provide. So if you go to the next slide, what this shows is the access information, but expanded with more information. And it's quite small, but what it says is that there is no caption performance for this show. It's a dance piece. There's no spoken narrative. There's no text. There is nothing to caption. This isn't an excuse for why we're not doing a caption performance. It's a way of us showing to our audience who might be looking for a caption performance because they're deaf or hard of hearing that we have thought about it. It's not applicable here. So they can either come to any performance they want or choose not to come to this production. But it's that creating trust with the audience that we have thought about them for every single show rather than written them off for one in particular. One final point I wanted to make is that we at Factory International, we're a large organization. So we are lucky enough that we have an in-house access manager. And I know most people on this call won't have that. It's unusual in the UK as well. The thing about our access manager is that her role is strategic, it's not operational. So she helped create the framework for access audits, for access riders, but she's not personally responsible for carrying them out. That sits across the entire team. So for the access audits, the website team are responsible for getting that information on the website. They know they have to include it. It is in the style guide. It's not negotiable. And the teams who are working with the venues that we use during the festival, so a combination of technical, front of house and producing, are responsible for giving them that information. So our philosophy is that access is everyone's responsibility, not just the person who has it in her job title, which is why you've got me talking to you today, rather than me saying as soon as I got the email about this, that Jay, the access manager, can do it instead. Although I will say if anyone wants detailed follow-up, I'm probably going to send you to her. Thank you very much.
Oh,